Hey there, and welcome. Have you ever heard a story about someone getting fired and just thought to yourself, wait a minute, can they actually do that? I mean, from our social media posts to what we do on our own time, the line between our personal and professional lives is getting fuzzier and fuzzier. So today, we're going to dive into some truly strange but very real cases to figure out exactly where that line is drawn.
So let's just kick things off with a big one. Picture this. You're on medically approved sick leave for anxiety. To kind of de-stress, you go and play some music at a local piano bar. Could that cost you your job? It sounds absolutely ridiculous, but believe it or not, this really happened.
And that's really the core of the problem, isn't it? When mental health, our private lives, and our jobs all collide, it creates these super confusing situations where the rules are, well, they're not always that clear.
Okay, so let's get into it. We're going to look at 4 pretty bizarre case studies from all around the world. And trust me, each one pushes the boundaries of what you'd think is a fireable offense versus what's just a protected personal matter.
First up, we're off to Rome. We've got a bus driver who's on certified medical leave for an anxiety disorder. Seems pretty straightforward, right? Well, his employer started to get a little suspicious. So what did they do? They hired private detectives to follow him. No joke. And what did these detectives find? They found him at a piano bar, serenading the crowd. His employer immediately claimed this was, quote, completely incompatible with his sick leave. And, you guessed it, they fired him on the spot. But here is where the story takes a massive twist. The case went all the way to Italy's Supreme Court, and they actually sided with the driver. The court basically said the company couldn't prove that singing was bad for his recovery. In fact, and you gotta love this, they suggested it might have even helped his anxiety.
Okay, next, let's hop over to the UK for a totally different kind of story. We have a junior chef who gets into a really loud, very public argument with her ex-partner, who also works with her, right there in the hotel where they're employed.
And yikes, guests heard that exact line. It was intense. After the complaints rolled in, she was called into a meeting and was promptly fired for her conduct.
But wait, because here is where it gets really interesting. An employment tribunal completely overturned her dismissal. They found that her outburst was directly linked to her diagnosed mental health disabilities. And because of that, the employer had failed to consider this or make what's called reasonable adjustments before just firing her. Our third case takes us to the US, and this one involves a primary school art teacher. His whole world got turned upside down when his social media posts were dug up and exposed by a conservative account on X, formerly Twitter.
And these posts were, well, they were alarming. He talked openly about his bipolar disorder and being violent during manic episodes, but he also had images worshiping Satan and phrases like kill the poor. You can imagine, parents were freaking out.
The public backlash was huge. A special board meeting was called, packed with parents who were terrified for their kids' safety. The result? The school fired him, effective immediately. And for our final case, we're bringing it home to Australia. A sales consultant for Bing Lee resigned and then decided to sue the company. She claims she'd been bullied, discriminated against, and even underpaid. Now, this case took a really weird turn. The court found that her claims were embellished and just didn't have any proof. But when she tried to appeal the decision, get this, even her own lawyers raised concerns about her mental capacity to actually give them instructions. So, unsurprisingly, the court threw the whole case out. The judge pointed out that it showed the perils of litigating hurt feelings and said that it probably wasn't racism or sexism. Her colleagues just didn't like her personality. Ouch. So, okay, 4 wild stories, 4 totally different outcomes. What's the common thread here? Let's try and break down when a personal health issue crosses that invisible line into fireable misconduct. This really shows you the razor's edge we're talking about. The key difference seems to boil down to 2 things. First is the behavior linked to a protected thing like a disability. And second, what's the actual impact on the workplace? So for the chef, her outburst was seen as a symptom of her disability. For the bus driver, singing didn't get in the way of his recovery. But on the flip side, the teacher's posts created a very real safety concern for the school, and the sales clerk's case it had no evidence to back it up. And this all leads us to a super important legal concept, especially here in Australia: unfair dismissal. See, it isn't just about whether you are fired, it's about the how and the why. An employer needs to have a valid reason, and they have to follow a fair and proper process to do it.
So what does all this mean for you, practically speaking? If you're working in Australia, what are your actual protections?
Well, you might be surprised to learn it's probably more than you think.
Here in Australia, you're covered by some pretty powerful laws, like the Fair Work Act. These laws basically say an employer can't just fire you because they're having a bad day. They have to follow a fair process, and they need a solid, valid reason that's related to either your conduct or your ability to do the job. It's not a free-for-all.
So, if you ever find yourself in this kind of situation, those first few moments are absolutely critical. First off, don't let anyone pressure you into signing anything. Second, document everything, every email, every conversation. Third, you have to know your deadlines. You often only have 21 days to file a claim. And most important of all, get expert advice to figure out what your real options are. As all these stories show, the little details matter, a lot. The exact same situation can go in completely different directions depending on the evidence, the medical facts, and the specific laws. Trying to navigate all that by yourself, it's just overwhelming. And that's exactly why getting specialized help is so critical. There are legal experts and groups out there that have handled literally thousands of these cases. That kind of experience is what you need to make your way through the system and fight for a fair go.
So, we'll leave you with this question to chew on. In today's workplace, where all the lines are blurring, you have to know your rights. So ask yourself, is your workplace actually protecting you, or is it just protecting itself? Knowing the answer to that could make all the difference.